The space station Halo 9 floated in the darkness like a small candle in an endless night. Far below, a blue-white gas giant turned slowly, glowing like a sleeping giant. Stars sparkled around the station, cold and quiet, like distant eyes watching a story they would never tell. Inside the station, the corridors were clean and bright, but too quiet. No footsteps. No chatter. Only the soft hum of machines breathing life into the empty metal. Dr. Alara Kess walked slowly through the main observation deck. Her hands brushed the smooth wall as if the cold metal could give her answers. The huge window in front of her showed the stars, thousands of them, but none of them looked back. She had been on this station for 8 months. 8 months of waiting. 8 months without a single message from Earth. The word felt like a memory now. She used to imagine its cities, its oceans, the smell of wet ground after rain. Now when she closed her eyes, she saw nothing, no home, only the black silence of space. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against the glass. It was cold. Her breath fogged up a small circle. She whispered softly to herself, "It's too quiet." Behind her, footsteps echoed, but they were not human. 3 tall figures entered the room. Their shapes were long and smooth, their skin pale like soft stone. They were not from Earth. They were observers, alien envoys sent to watch humanity's final mission here. They didn't talk much. They didn't laugh. Their language was made of soft clicks and musical tones. Their leader, Thaloran, tilted his head slightly as he looked at her. "Dr. Kess," he said in a calm, almost musical voice, "you are here again?" "Yes," she answered without turning. "Where else would I go?" "You look at the stars every day," Thaloran said. "They're all I have left to look at." The aliens didn't understand human emotions the way humans did. For them, silence was natural. It was peaceful. For Alara, silence was heavy. It pressed down on her chest like a weight she couldn't push away. No new messages had come through the communication array in 127 days. Earth had gone quiet. Maybe the network failed. Maybe something happened back home. Maybe they were simply forgotten. Thaloran stepped closer. His big dark eyes studied her face with a kind of curious sadness. "Your kind does not like quiet," he said. Alara laughed, but it was a short, dry sound. "No," she said. "We don't. Why?" She looked at him for a moment. "How do you explain loneliness to someone who never felt it?" "Because," she said softly, "when it's too quiet, it feels like we're the only ones left." Thaloran didn't reply. He didn't understand. But he stayed there anyway, watching her breathe against the glass. Later that day, Alara sat in the mess hall. The lights flickered softly like a tired heartbeat. She held a cup of synthetic coffee, warm but tasteless. Around her, a few other crew members sat in silence. No one spoke. They just stared at the walls, at the floor, at nothing at all. Lieutenant Rami, the youngest of the crew, tapped a finger against the table. "Any news?" he asked without hope. Alara shook her head. "Nothing." Rami leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. "Maybe the network's down. Maybe," she said, though they both knew they'd checked 100 times. "Or maybe," he said with a sad smile, "we're just too far for them to care." Alara didn't answer. She didn't need to. Everyone on the station carried that same thought like a quiet shadow. On the far side of the hall, one of the aliens stood near the doorway. Their bodies didn't slump. They didn't pace or fidget. They simply stood still like carved statues, observing humans carefully. Humans confused them. Humans laughed when they were tired. They cried when they were strong. And when the silence grew too deep, they spoke, even if no one answered. At night, Alara returned to the observation deck again. It had become her personal corner of the universe. The others avoided it because it reminded them of what they'd lost. She came here because it reminded her that something still existed beyond the walls. She closed her eyes and imagined Earth's sky, the blue stretching forever, the smell of grass, the wind against her skin. She used to think space would be full of life, full of new voices, but all she found here was quiet. Her throat tightened, her hands curled into fists. She whispered at first, but the words grew louder as if pulled out by something deep inside her. "I can't take it anymore." The words hung in the air, soft but sharp. They echoed against the walls, against the glass, against the silence. Thaloran, who had been standing quietly behind the doorway, tilted his head. Her voice sounded strange to him, cracked, trembling, alive. She turned slowly, her eyes wet but bright. "How?" she asked. How do man survive this? The alien blinked, confused. Survive? This emptiness, she said, pointing at the black outside. This silence. Thaloran stepped closer, carefully. We do not feel it as you do, he said. For us, silence is life. For us, Ilara whispered, silence is a cage. He didn't understand, but he listened, and that somehow was enough to keep her talking. The next morning, the central lights dimmed slightly. Power conservation. No one said anything, but they all noticed. It was another reminder that they were far, far from help. Ilara joined the small group in the common room. There were only 7 humans left on Halo 9. 7 people and 6 alien envoys. The humans huddled together, drinking recycled water, trading old jokes that didn't make anyone laugh anymore. Chief Engineer Malik tapped a finger on the table. We need to send a stronger pulse signal, he said. Even if no one's listening, it'll make us feel less forgotten. Ilara nodded. I'll help. The others didn't argue. It wasn't really about fixing the problem. It was about pretending the problem could be fixed. That's what humans did best. Even when everything seemed lost, they built something to hold on to. Thaloran and 2 other aliens watched from the doorway again. Their expressions were unreadable. Finally, one of them asked softly, Why do you continue, if there is no answer? Malik looked at Ilara, then back at them. Because not trying would feel worse. The aliens fell silent. They had lived for centuries in a culture where hopelessness was met with stillness. But humans fought silence with noise, emptiness with motion, fear with stubborn light. Hours passed. Ilara sat in the comms bay adjusting frequencies. Rami was beside her, tapping buttons just to hear them click. It made the room feel less dead. Do you ever wonder? Rami asked quietly. What if Earth's gone? Ilara stared at the blinking lights. Every day? And I still send the signal, she said. Because maybe someone somewhere will hear it. Even if it's not Earth, Rami nodded slowly. That was the thing about humans. Even if the world ended, they would still build beacons in the dark. That night, something changed. Ilara went to the observation deck again. But this time she wasn't alone. One of the aliens, a younger envoy named Shiel, was already standing there staring at the stars. She was surprised. The aliens rarely came here. Why are you here? Ilara asked softly. Shiel's voice was smooth, almost curious. I want to understand. Understand what? You said silence is a cage, he said. I want to hear what you hear. Ilara smiled faintly. You won't like it. They both stood side by side, looking at the stars. After a few minutes, Shiel shifted slightly. It is loud, he whispered. Inside. Yes, Ilara said. That's what silence does to us. She started humming a song she remembered from Earth, a soft melody, slow and human. It filled the room like a warm blanket. Shiel tilted his head. You make sound to fight it. Yes. Shiel didn't say anything else. But he stayed. The next few days, more aliens began to appear near the humans. Not to speak, not to lead, but to listen. They couldn't understand the feeling fully, but something in them recognized the strange strength humans carried. It wasn't in their machines. It wasn't in their intelligence. It was in their need to feel something. Even in the dark, Ilara noticed it. When she walked into the mess hall, 2 alien envoys sat quietly near the group. When she hummed softly, they tilted their heads as if they were listening. The silence was still there, heavy, but it no longer belonged to the void alone. Now there was something human in it, something alive. One evening, while adjusting the power core, Malik called everyone to the central hall. We got a faint echo back, he said. His voice wasn't sure, but it carried a spark. It's weak. Could be noise. Could be something. For the first time in months, the crew didn't look tired. They looked awake. Thaloran stepped forward. Does this change anything? He asked. Ilara smiled softly. Everything, because it wasn't about the message. It was about hope. And humans had a strange way of turning the smallest echo into a song. That night, Ilara stood at the window again. She whispered the same words, but this time, they felt different. I can't take it anymore, she said softly. But now, there were footsteps behind her, alien and human alike. Thaloran placed a gentle hand on the window, mimicking her gesture. Then can we survive together, he said. Ilara closed her eyes. The stars didn't look so far anymore. The faint signal changed everything. It wasn't strong. It wasn't clear. But it was real. For months, the crew of Halo 9 had been living under the heavy blanket of silence. Now, for the first time, there was a small hole in that blanket, a spark of sound that reached through the black. Dr. Alara Kess stood in the communications bay, staring at the blinking green light that pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. It was weak, broken, and hard to read, but it was hope. "Can we decode it?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. Chief Malik leaned over the console, his eyes tired but awake. "We'll need time. It's buried in noise. Could be a bounce from some satellite, or a real message." Lieutenant Rami, who had been sitting with his head down for weeks, suddenly stood up. "Even if it's noise, it means something is out there." Thyloran entered quietly with 2 other alien envoys. Their tall, elegant shapes made the small room feel even smaller. Their black, reflective eyes focused on the screen. "What is this sound?" Thyloran asked. "It might be a message," Ilara explained. "From Earth or from somewhere else. Why does it matter?" Ilara turned to look at him. She saw the same calm, distant curiosity she had seen many times before. The aliens didn't feel hope like humans did. They understood it as an idea, not a flame. "Because," she said slowly, "a small voice means we're not alone." Thyloran tilted his head, repeating the word carefully. "Alone?" Ilara smiled faintly. "Yes, alone." For the next few days, the station was no longer quiet in the same way. It was still surrounded by silence, but inside the silence was different. Lighter, filled with quiet whispers, soft footsteps, tapping fingers. The humans worked on the signal together. Malik sat with wires and scanners, fixing and refixing every small piece. Rami stayed at the screens, marking patterns. Alara watched the signal repeat itself over and over, like a stubborn echo refusing to die. The aliens didn't know what to do at first. They had spent their time in their sleeping pods, away from the crew. Now they began to appear more often in the common areas. They didn't help with the signal, they didn't know how. But they watched. They listened. Some tried to ask questions in their soft, musical voices. "Why do you smile?" Sheil asked one day, "when the sound is broken?" "Because it's still there," Rami answered with a grin. "Broken things can still mean something." In the evenings, when the lights dimmed to save power, Ilara would sit near the large window. Before, it had been her quiet corner. Now she was never alone there. Sheil began to sit beside her. Sometimes Thyloran joined. Even Malik, who used to avoid the observation deck, came once in a while, holding a small cup of recycled water like it was a glass of Earth's best coffee. No one said much. But that was the beauty of it. They didn't have to fill the silence with big words. The silence itself was no longer an enemy. It had become something they shared. One evening, Sheil looked at the stars and spoke slowly. "I understand now," he said. "The silence is loud." Ilara nodded. "Yes, but why do humans not let it stay quiet?" "Because silence reminds us of what we lost," she said softly. "And when we make sound, it reminds us that we're still here." Sheil didn't reply, but he hummed, a soft, low sound almost like the wind. Ilara recognized it. It was the melody she had hummed weeks ago. The alien was trying to copy it, she smiled. For the first time in months, the stars didn't feel so cold. The next morning, the station woke up to something new. Malik rushed into the mess hall holding a tablet. His usual slow steps were quick and light. "We got part of the signal cleaned," he said, almost out of breath. "It's human," Rami jumped up. "Human? From Earth?" Malik shook his head. "Not Earth, a colony station, but definitely human." The room filled with soft gasps and whispers. Even the aliens leaned closer, curious. "It says, Aurora," Malik said. "That's the name of an old exploration outpost. Far edge of the system. Could be survivors." Ilara felt her chest tighten, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from something warmer, something she hadn't felt in so long. "Then we're not alone," she whispered. Rami laughed softly. "Told you." After that, everything changed again. The humans began to plan, not just to survive, but to reach. Even if the colony was weak, even if it couldn't help them, it existed. And that meant they could send a message back. Malik worked on building a stronger transmitter. Rami mapped out the star routes to find the most efficient way to boost the signal. Ilara wrote the message they would send, a simple short sentence. "This is Halo 9. We hear you." The aliens watched all of this closely. They had never seen humans act like this before. Not with this much energy. Not with this much. Light Thaloran finally asked one evening, "Why work so hard for a sound?" Elara smiled. "Because a sound can bring people home." "Home," Thaloran repeated carefully. "What is home?" Elara thought for a moment. "It's not just a place," she said. "It's people. It's feeling safe. It's knowing someone is out there waiting." Thaloran blinked slowly. For his people, home was just a location, a point in space. But for humans, it was something they carried in their hearts. As the work continued, something unexpected began to happen. The aliens slowly joined in. Shield offered to help stabilize the frequency field. They were better at sensing energy fluctuations. Thaloran shared some of their technology to improve power flow. It was small help, but it mattered. The station, once divided between quiet alien pods and quiet human rooms, began to mix. People and envoys worked side by side, speaking in short words, hand signals, soft laughs. The silence was still there, but it had changed its shape. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was wide, open, something that held them, not crushed them. One night, when the system was almost ready, the crew gathered at the observation deck. They had made this place their shared center. The stars outside looked exactly the same as before, but everything inside had changed. Rami carried a small projector. Malik had the transmitter controls. Elara sat at the center, holding the message pad in her hands. The aliens stood quietly in a half circle, their glowing eyes reflecting the stars. Malik looked at her. "Are you ready?" She nodded. "Let's send it." The button clicked. A soft light blinked. The station let out a small, pulsing signal. It wasn't loud. It wasn't strong. But it carried their voice through the darkness. "This is Halo 9, we hear you," they all waited. 1 second, 2, 10, a full minute passed, nothing. Rami exhaled slowly. Malik tapped the console. "We'll keep trying," he said. Elara didn't speak. She just pressed her hand against the glass window and stared at the stars. And then, a tiny sound filled the room. Beep. Everyone froze. The sound repeated, beep, beep. Malik's eyes widened. They answered. The room filled with soft laughter, not loud, not wild. Just warm, human. Even Thaloran's lips curved slightly, which for his kind was almost a smile. The message wasn't clear. Only a few words came through. "Hear you. Alive, hope." But that was enough. Enough to remind them why they were still breathing. Shield turned to Elara. "You were right," he said softly. "Sound breaks the silence." She nodded. "Yes, it always does." The following days were filled with purpose. Every corner of the station buzzed, not with noise but with quiet, steady energy. The humans took shifts to keep the signal alive. They repaired old systems that had been sleeping for months. The aliens, who had once watched from afar, became part of it. Shield learned to say simple human words. Rami taught him how to play an old Earth guessing game. Malik laughed more than anyone thought he could. Even Thaloran, calm and serious, began spending more time around them. He didn't fully understand, but something inside him was changing. He had lived a long time and visited many star systems, but he had never seen a species that could turn silence into a story. One evening, Elara sat alone, or at least she thought she was alone, by the observation deck. The stars outside sparkled like frozen fire. She held a small old photo in her hands. It was faded, but she could still see it. Her family on Earth standing under a bright blue sky. Thaloran stepped beside her, silent as always. After a moment, he spoke. "Is that home?" "Yes," she said softly. "Do you miss it?" "Every second." He tilted his head. "And yet, you smile," she nodded. "Because missing something means it was real. And because maybe, just maybe, we'll see it again." Thaloran looked out at the stars. He had never thought of memory as a kind of strength. For his people, time was a straight line. For humans, it was a circle that never broke. The next day, a clearer message came through. It was weak but strong enough to make everyone run to the comms bay. "Halo 9, this is Aurora Outpost. We read you. You are not alone." The room filled with cheers and soft clapping. Even the aliens joined in, tapping their hands in their own strange rhythm. Malik whispered, "We did it." Rami said, "They're real." Elara closed her eyes and whispered, "We're not alone." That night, the entire station gathered under the stars. No one spoke for a long time. The silence was no longer frightening. It was a friend now, sitting quietly with them. Sheil hummed softly. Rami joined with a whistle. Malik added a tapping beat on the wall. Ilara began to sing in a quiet voice. The aliens didn't know the words, but they listened. The melody wrapped around everyone like a warm blanket. The stars stayed cold. The darkness stayed endless. But inside Halo 9 there was light that didn't need to be seen. It only needed to be felt. In that moment, Thaloran understood what Ilara had meant all those weeks ago. Humans did not survive silence by ignoring it. The station Halo 9 was no longer a forgotten piece of metal floating in the dark. It had a heartbeat now. The message from Aurora Outpost had changed everything. The signal was weak and broken, but it was real. The humans were no longer just waiting to be found. They were being heard. And that made all the difference. Every morning began with the same sound now, a soft, steady beep. Beep, beep, the sound of someone far away answering back. Dr. Ilara Kess woke to that sound like others might wake to birds singing on Earth. She lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling, letting the soft rhythm wash over her. It was like breathing together with someone across the stars. The crew had more energy now. Malik moved through the station with a grin that seemed strange on his usually serious face. Rami whistled tunes while working on the antenna array. Even the air felt lighter, less heavy, less still. The alien envoys noticed it too. They had studied human behavior since the beginning, but this was new. Humans had gone from quiet survival to something more powerful, hope in action. Thaloran stood in the mess hall with two other envoys, watching the crew eat their morning meal. They look different, he said softly in his musical voice. Sheil nodded. Their faces are brighter. They are the same faces, Thaloran replied. Sheil tilted his head. No, the silence inside them is smaller now. Ilara walked in, holding a small datapad. She heard them and smiled. You're right, she said. It is smaller. Thaloran looked at her curiously. How can silence be smaller? Because we filled it with something else, she answered. With sound. With hope, he repeated the word slowly. Hope? Yes, Ilara said. It grows. Later that day, the humans gathered in the communications bay again. Malik was trying to boost the signal one more time. If we can clear more static, we'll get a direct location, he explained. Rami was tapping the screen with excitement. Imagine that. Real coordinates, real people. Thaloran and Sheil stood behind them, watching carefully. Their people had never understood why humans cared so much about distant voices. But now something in their alien hearts felt warmer when they heard the sound. The screen flashed. Words scrolled across slowly, broken but readable. We see your beacon, hold on. We're coming. Ilara covered her mouth with her hand. Malik blinked twice. Rami let out a sound between a laugh and a cry. They're coming, Ilara whispered. They're actually coming. The words echoed through the room. Even the aliens felt something. Something like wind moving through a place that had been still too long. Days passed quickly. The crew began preparing the station. Not for survival, but for arrival. For months they had only thought about staying alive. Now they were cleaning, repairing, adjusting systems, making the station ready for visitors. Sheil watched Ilara carefully cleaning a viewing panel with a soft cloth. Why do this? He asked. They will come whether it shines or not. Ilara laughed lightly. It's not about the shine. It's about making this place ready for them. It's about respect. Respect, Sheil repeated. Is that also a sound? Ilara smiled. No, but it feels like one. Sheil thought about that for a long time. The aliens grew closer to the humans. They began joining their routines, not just observing from the edges. Sheil started helping Rami in the engineering bay. His long fingers were better at handling tiny wires than human hands. Thaloran sat with Malik during long shifts at the console. They didn't speak much, but their quiet presence felt good. The humans started teaching the aliens small human things, songs, jokes, how to make tea with recycled water. The aliens, who had once thought silence was strength, now began to understand a new kind of strength. Thaloran once said to Ilara, "Your people build sound like we build walls." Ilara smiled softly. And maybe both can keep us safe. The day the final message came was bright, though there was no sun in space. Rami was on the comms deck when the message lit up the screen. His eyes went wide. Ilara. He shouted, "You need to see this." The entire crew gathered quickly. The aliens followed, curious. Malik leaned over the console. The signal was strong, clearer than anything they had heard before. "Halo 9, this is Aurora. We're on approach vector. ETA 72 hours. For a long moment, no one said a word. And then a sound filled the station. A wave of soft laughter, sighs, quiet cheers. They weren't forgotten. They weren't alone. Help was coming. The next 3 days were the most alive the station had ever been. Ilara organized shifts to make sure systems were ready. Malik worked on stabilizing the docking bay. Rami checked the power core 3 times in one day, even though it was fine. The aliens helped in their own way. Thaloran adjusted the gravity system with precise movements. Shield painted soft, glowing lines along the floor to guide arriving visitors. The station was slowly becoming more than a survival box. It was becoming a home. On the second night, Ilara sat again by the observation window. The stars hadn't changed. The gas giant below still turned slowly like it always had. But Ilara had changed. She thought back to the night she had pressed her forehead to this same glass, whispering, "I can't take it anymore." She remembered how heavy the silence had felt then. Like it would crush her. Now the silence wasn't crushing. It was calm. She wasn't trapped in it anymore. She was sharing it. Thaloran joined her without a word. After a long moment, he said softly, "You were right." "About what?" "Silence is not the end." She turned to him, smiling. "No, it never was." As the hours ticked away, the crew gathered one last time in the common area. The aliens joined too, sitting in their quiet, graceful way. Rami brought out a small projector, a simple device with old Earth songs stored inside. The room filled with soft music. No one spoke. Some closed their eyes. Some smiled quietly. Even Thaloran seemed to be listening, not with his ears but with something deeper. Shield whispered to Ilara, "What is this called?" "It's called a song. What does it do?" "It reminds us we're alive," she answered. Finally, the day came. The ship from Aurora appeared on their sensors like a new star being born. It moved slowly but surely, growing brighter as it approached. The docking bay lights flickered on. Malik stood at the controls. Rami paced back and forth with nervous energy. Ilara stood near the airlock, hands slightly shaking, not from fear but from something much stronger. The aliens stood beside the humans, tall and silent. They had not expected to be part of this moment. But now they wouldn't miss it. The docking clamps engaged with a low, smooth click. Air pressure equalized. A green light blinked. Ilara took a deep breath. She didn't run to the door. She simply stepped forward, slow and steady. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Through the misted light, shadows appeared. Human figures. Real voices. "This is Aurora," a voice said. "We made it," Rami laughed, tears in his eyes. Malik exhaled for the first time in hours. Ilara felt warmth rise through her chest like sunlight after a long winter. She whispered, "Welcome home." That night, the station was alive like never before. People from Aurora filled the halls. They shared stories, laughter, quiet tears. They looked around the clean corridors, the glowing floor lines, the gentle hum of the alien systems, and they saw not just survival, but life. The aliens watched, listening to the waves of sound. Thaloran said softly, "You built a light without needing to see it." Ilara looked at him. "Yes," she said. "That's what humans do." Weeks passed. The station became a shared place between humans and aliens. It wasn't perfect. Sometimes it was quiet again. Sometimes things broke. But the silence no longer frightened anyone. People told stories of that dark time, not with pain, but with pride, because they had made it through not by fighting the darkness, but by filling it with their own light. Shield began teaching his people how to hum. Malik helped rebuild the communication array. Rami painted small stars on the wall of the mess hall so no one would forget what they had waited for. And Ilara, she often returned to the observation window. She no longer whispered, "I can't take it anymore." Now when she spoke, she said something else. We survived. One evening, as the stars shone outside, Thaloran joined Ilara once again at the window. "Humans are strange," he said. Ilara smiled. "I know." You sang to silence. She nodded. "Yes." And the silence listened. She looked out at the stars. Yes, it always does. Epilogue. The galaxy remained wide and silent, but something had changed in that silence because once, in a forgotten corner of space, a group of humans refused to let silence be the last word. They filled it with whispers, songs, and hope. And that hope spread not just to humans but to others too. It became a spark, a small light, a beginning, and it all started with one voice breaking the silence.